Hello everyone, New Medium here. This week we have a haunted doll and then some. I love finding videos like these. Videos with visual evidence and movement are very interesting. They're chock full of interesting things to look at, whether they're real or not. This video was uploaded to Facebook by someone named Otra Dimension. I took this video from an uploader on YouTube. Unfortunately, the original link on Facebook is in their Facebook page or group and not accessible. I was going to brush this off until I searched them up and found a second ghost video. At the point of doing this, I had already looked into the video I had originally planned to showcase. Let me show you some things important about it to understand my concern. Everyone seems to believe that this video is real. When you look at the other video, it's actually covered by news outlets. It's rumored to be the ghost of a deceased worker. But first of all, let's address the doll. If you're observant, you might notice it moves back and forth. Head down, head up. Its movement is linear, meaning that there is no acceleration, and an immediate stop. The pigtail moves as if it has joints, and doesn't align with the head. If you reverse the video of it moving down and compare it to it moving back up, they do the same motion. In addition to that, the cropping is off. The doll is in the room, but was photoshopped and isolated. They then warp and animate it to make it look like it's moving. It started in this position, then they warped it to move upwards. That's not even the worst part. I didn't show much of the scene, but there's evidence of audio and video manipulation. To begin with, we can compare the scenes. You hear the girl playing, some cars in the background, not sure why, maybe a window's open. Then the scene is dead quiet. It's not because it's later, and here's why. Did you hear it? That was the loudest paper sound I have ever heard. Back then there was a ghost challenge trend on YouTube called the Charlie Challenge. I hate to break it to you if you don't know, but the trick to moving the pencil was to blow on it. With your mouth, and sometimes with a straw. A straw because it's quiet and subtle. To make movements like this, with wind, it would create a lot of sound. Hence why the original audio is muted, and new audio is thrown on top. Then where is the wind coming from? It's actually in the most obvious spot, right here, behind the TV. To prove this, we can look at the way the paper moves. One in particular gets stuck and reaches for the sky, and then moves to the left and falls off. We could talk about the paper all day, but there's more. If it isn't already enough evidence, I'll show you some evidence of visual manipulation in the scene. First of all, when things are happening, shadows as well as unexplained screen movements and pinching occur. This is suspicious, but not necessarily evidence. A remote control falls over with pills on them for whatever reason. The remote control moves, not the pills. Before we dive into this, we have to talk about the cameras. These are apparently security cameras. They're in horrible spots. Since my assumption so far is that these videos are fake, this camera is probably on a shelf or something similar. This is important because it would explain the camera glitches. These glitches are not caused by camera errors, but by manipulation. More specifically, cropping. Cropping and scaling. If you take note of the laziness so far, the fan, the audio splicing, and the doll moving, cropping would actually be the easiest way to make a fake video. Take for example this scene with the remote. Imagine someone standing here, flicks the remote, they crop and Photoshop themselves out, and put a scene from earlier over top when they weren't there. They flick it, their finger is still in the scene, so they up the scale of the scene and stretch it to cover the finger. Hence why this happens. The table can be explained by a multitude of things. Because of the camera quality, it's impossible to see the strings pulling the table. It could also be cropping. There is some evidence of manipulation. The corner of the table might be being pushed. And there's also a magic leftover shadow. I'm not going to talk about this too much, because we already know this video is fake. So at this point, I wanted to look at the uploader. They have a video covered by news outlets about a hospital. The ghost it captures rumored to be a former doctor. Ghost videos even from 2016 were faked, and often got away with it. We're going to use everything we learned from the last video to debunk this ghost. But we're also going to try and prove if this video is real despite our evidence. Because, well, that's the process. Because of our last video, we have some things to look out for. Cropping and audio manipulation. Based on what is seen, this camera uses a CMOS chip to scan light. CMOS chips move in a sweeping motion, almost like a TV, to translate light into pixels. Sometimes it doesn't render chunks on the same frame, so it has to redefine them in the next frame of the video, even though nothing technically changes. This can create movements that aren't actually there. Anytime a frame of the video freezes, parts get redefined in the next scene. I do have to mention though, there are some scenes where it freezes but stays the same, but this could be chalked up to a compression or decompression error more than an editing or splicing editing error. It's hard to see at first due to the camera quality, but I believe that the camera quality is on purpose for this reason. But just next to the door there is a little box. Now this box is blurred beyond belief. It is way different in quality than everything else. I initially thought this was due to some kind of CGI or importing of a clip made by an actor. I know the answer to this, however. This is a real person. Going back to what I said about parts redefining, if the scene was fake and edited in, then the camera wouldn't be redefining it. That is why this person is actually in the scene. If this scene was fake and edited, then the camera wouldn't be redefining it. Going back to the cropping I mentioned earlier, this scene is still cropped and manipulated. A blur surrounds the ghost and even other parts. What we know so far is this thing is actually in the scene based on the camera's CMOS chip mentioned earlier. So with that in mind, why would they blur and manipulate their findings to such a degree? If you don't believe that this blur and cropping was done on purpose, then let me throw something interesting your way. The ghost has a reflection. The reflection doesn't match the apparition. In fact, it's green. A green suit or green blanket to manipulate with audio, to manipulate with video editing. They tried to hide this reflection and other errors using blurs, crops, and bad cameras. To do this would be difficult, especially given their cropping skills. Take for example this part. If a green head were to peer out, you would have to take this terrible quality wall, isolate it, then throw it over top of the head. They are lazy, so they messed up in several parts. One here is the head appearing in an instant over top the wall. This could be mistaken, however, so let's continue. The head then vanishes, then magically reappears. At one point when the person recording is backing away, the thing snaps out, but then there's an issue. You can see the gray silhouette of a person before the effect gets reapplied to the green man in an instant. Even by paranormal standards, something like this would be very unlikely, especially since the ghost would have already been materialized. There is no purpose for it to disappear and reappear like this, especially so fast. Essentially, they changed green into gray, then plop some special effects over top. I'm going to make an effort to contact the news outlets so they can update their news stories from 2016. I think it'd be really funny. But like I said, I love finding big videos like this. I got to learn how they faked the ghost video and got away with it. The methods are simple but effective, and I'm glad I could show the world some truth. Hi, my name's Nick, I'm in new media, and these videos are both fake. Ghosts.